Billy, his legs
Yes.
are gone.
Billy.
He's a defensive liability, and I question whether the bat speed's still there.
His legs are gone.
Grady.
We'll be lucky to get 60 games out of him. Why do you like him?
Because he gets on base.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I'm SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. We're going to be talking this episode about the Jackson Rockabillys, a woodbat collegiate summer team just about to start its first season. I'll be speaking later on in this episode with designer Ryan Foose, who created their suite of logos. I'll be speaking with Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett. And of course, Dan Simon of Studio Simon is back with a Studio Simon Stumper. Right now, I'm so pleased to be joined by Dennis Bastien, who is the owner, operator, and we were just saying before the episode, before our recording here, sign painter, wall painter, hot dog vendor. What is it? What else are you doing here for the team, Dennis?
Equipment buyer, clubhouse worker, built a stage recently. So this is what we do. This has been our life for since the Carter administration, if you will.
All right, that's one way of
48 years. 48 years.
All right, that's one way to measure that that amount of time. Absolutely. The Jackson Rockabillys, really fun brand, really fun logo, created by Ryan Foose, who I mentioned I'll be speaking to later on in this episode. He'll be a returning guest to Baseball by Design. This logo was unveiled last year. I wrote about it in June of 2022. You're getting ready to get started on your first season of play. Your denouement here as the Jackson Rockabillys, replacing obviously a team that was there, an affiliated minor league baseball team, the only Double-A team to lose its status as an affiliated team in minor league baseball when the Vogon Destructor fleet came through and reorganized minor league baseball. So you filled the baseball void in Jackson, Tennessee, with this great new brand, this great new logo and nickname. What is a Rockabilly? What does it mean to Jackson, Tennessee, for a baseball team to be called the Rockabillys?
That's a good question. We'd done a lot of research and we ran a name the team contest, and we had 983 entries, and we had about 60 entries for Rockabillys, and we knew we would.
Okay.
So we narrowed the entries down to the Jackson 5, and so Rockabillys was one of them. We had 60 some people enter Rockabillys. Rockabilly, it was a phrase that was coined by what they called the $1 Million Quartet. And that was Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and a guy named Carl Perkins, who is from Jackson, Tennessee, grew up here, family's still here. He wrote Blue Suede Shoes, which he made famous. Elvis may have made it a little bit more famous. But he also wrote a couple of Elvis's early songs and a couple of Johnny Cash's early songs. So they would get together here in Jackson, and they would do jam sessions in the back rooms of old honky tonks or cafes or gas stations. And they come up with that new type of music, which is a little kind of hard banging. They called it Rockabilly because it was kind of a mix of rock and roll, country, and hillbilly.
Okay.
So that's where Rockabilly came from. And Rockabilly has been known in this area since the early 50s. That was the early time of Rockabilly music. The Beatles have said that they would have never come into existence if it hadn't been for Rockabilly music. You can look that up on Wikipedia. So this is the home of the Rockabilly International Museum, the Rockabilly Fan Club. So when they got the entries, we kind of felt, you know what, that's kind of old hat around here. Rockabilly, there's a Rockabilly Highway, Rockabilly Cafe, Rockabilly Stage, Rockabilly Nutrition Company, Rockabilly Library. We thought, it's kind of old hat. We wanted something brand new that nobody had ever used. But then one elderly lady entered of the 63 Rockabilly Goats. And we thought, you know what, we can have some fun with that. So at that time, and still going, goats are a pretty common and magical thing. I mean, you go into any store, there's goat milk soap, there's goat milk lotion. It's become kind of a hot thing. Our daughter, in fact, does goat yoga, which I still don't figure why that happens, but we came up with the Rockabilly logo, and there is some intricate parts of this that a lot of people Paul, that are not logo freaks would never catch. For example, this is the Johnny Cash smirk.
Oh, nice.
That's the Elvis's curl in the front of his cap or in front of his forehead. So we kind of come up with some rough stuff, called Ryan. Ryan put it to paper, put it to ink, and came up with something we feel is pretty unique, pretty catchy. It's been a big seller. It's been, well received here. We were a little concerned that maybe the word Jackson Rockabillys was registered or trademarked or copyrighted. It was
Yeah.
not.
All right.
You would have thought that somebody might have. They did not. So
Yeah.
we're good with that. It's been met with great reception. All of our vehicles have their logo on the side. We've got signage everywhere. So we've redone the ballpark, and we're doing a lot of spin-offs
Okay.
regarding the logo and the name.
All right.
So, for example, we just completed a contest in which all of our food will have a name from that era. It's not going to be your general hot dogs and hamburgers and popcorn. It's going to be, and I'm not going to give them away. I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
It might be the Great Balls of Fire nachos, or the Ain't Nothing But a Hot Dog. It might be something like the Heartbreak Hotel hamburgers.
Okay.
Our large sodas and beer might be the BB King size. Small ones might be the Little Richards.
Nice.
So we're doing a lot of things that have to do with that era. Our merchandise room is the jukebox.
Nice.
So everything we do is tied to that era.
I have to ask because it's near and dear to my heart. Do you have any special names for ice cream?
That one's in the works because
Okay.
we do carry both dip and the Dippin' Dots, the drop a
Okay.
name. So yes, we will come up with that name too. It's been entered, so we haven't made that public announcement yet.
All right. All right. And I'm hoping against hope that this great logo is going to be on a little plastic helmet that you can get the ice cream in here. So maybe, if not in your first season, eventually.
Yes, sir. And this is the home cap.
There he
We
is.
wanted to use
Okay.
colors that have never been used before. So it's a deep, deep, deep navy
Yeah.
with purple,
Yeah.
purple button, purple violets. And then this is what we call the goat mark.
The goat mark for our audio listeners is a close-up of just the goat head, and right under his chin there with his little beard is the guitar underneath it, the purple guitar, not the grayish brown guitar in the primary logo.
Now, you've mentioned that about the little beard.
Yeah.
Well, that is a goatee. So in our merchandise room, the jukebox, our T-shirts, the label above them is goat tees.
Of course it is. That's terrific. I love it. Looking at these other logos, I see that one has a goat in a truck. What's the significance of the pickup truck here?
We wanted our mascot, who is JR, by the way. JR is short for Jackson Rockabillys.
Okay.
And so we wanted him to be in a vehicle, which was kind of one of the jalopies from that era. So
Nice.
we chose a 1953 Ford pickup truck, and we are actually looking for one now to buy for parades and things. We found one, but it had a supercharger in it, so you can't go under about 50 without burning it up. So we have ordered a new copper-colored Ford Maverick. And just so you know, too, Paul, we don't have standard colors. For example, all of our colors have names. This is no-hitter navy.
Mm-hmm.
It is perfect game purple.
Mm-hmm.
It is shutout silver. It is full count copper. It is grand slam gray and home plate white. So we gave color names that were baseball themed.
Absolutely. It's like if like the Crayola colors were a baseball game. This is fun. Did you say full count copper? You said full count copper, right?
Full count copper.
Full count copper. Okay, I like this. Grand Slam gray. Now let me ask you this question. If it's the seventh inning and there's a no-hitter going on and you want to talk about this deep, deep, almost black navy that you all have, can you say no-hitter navy, or do you have to just you can't say it because there's one going on?
You're right. I am superstitious. I'm a baseball purist. I've been around it for 60 some years. So yeah, we will not do that.
All right. All right.
We'll give you
one of
that
the
one.
other logos that you have going on here looks like, if I may, some blue suede shoes.
That has been unveiled. Next year, 2024, we'll be unveiling an alternate uniform.
Okay.
And so maybe we'll select a date of the week, and will be the Blue Suedes. Blue Suedes was the number 2 entered name in the Name the Team contest.
Uh-huh.
that we narrowed it down to. So, and it's kind of old hat around here also.
Hmm.
But for example, I mentioned that about food. There's will be a blue suede. Now, do something suede doesn't sound very appetizing, but we will have the Rockabilly Philly cheesesteak.
Okay. All
That
right.
was
As a
another
as
one.
a Philadelphia native myself, I'll be interested to try that out. See, see how it holds up.
You got to get out and see us.
So the town of Jackson, Tennessee, is halfway between essentially Nashville and Memphis, and there are
Correct.
two pretty big musical juggernauts there. I mean, those are pretty two big music scenes. The music scene, the rockabilly music scene that the team name is based on, is distinctive. Where can I hear rockabilly now? If I go to Jackson, Tennessee for a game, am I going to be able to go out afterwards? Will there be rockabilly music at the games?
You just happened to mention that, but we just built a stage under our pavilion, and every Saturday night we're going to have a local band play after the game in
I
the
love it.
extra inning stage. And so, yes, we will have a salute to Carl Perkins night out
Nice.
here. We haven't got it done yet, but we are looking to do a Carl Perkins bobblehead in our first 2 years. It may not happen this year. We are very much behind this year because of a college game we put on in November that went bonkers that we worked 2.5 months on. So,
Okay.
yeah, this is rockabilly music is something that's fun. It's neat. In fact, I will tell you that in 3 weeks we are unveiling, releasing our own song.
Oh, no kidding.
So we have had produced our own song, and it's an upbeat tempo. I might say it's a little bit of a combination of jailhouse rock, uh, Great Balls of Fire, and maybe Barbara Ann from the Beach Boys, kind of a hard hitting, fast, brassy type thing that we wrote the lyrics, and it's pretty good.
So when I looked up the significance of this team and when I was researching the team, I kept typing Rockabilly's IES, and you all spell it with a YS instead of IES. Was that an intentional decision? What went into the spelling of Rockabilly's?
Billy Goats.
Billy Goats, of course. Of course. Was there any point where you said that name was suggested? Was there any point where you thought you might actually be the Rockabilly Goats?
No,
Okay.
no, because there is a minor league team in Hartford, Connecticut called the Yard Goats.
Of course.
So we like to be different. And so, big props to Ryan Foose. Ryan took our ideas and our thoughts and kind of some general scratchings on pencil shots and made it ideal and came up with a lot of other looks for us too. So,
Yeah.
no, the Rockabillys just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
And
It
I
does.
like names that roll off the tongue. So, again, it fits. And we've met with nothing but success. We haven't heard one negative comment. So, the goats, we're doing a golf outing with the players, golf with the goats.
Okay.
Of course, goats has numerous meanings, as you know.
Of course.
Greatest of all time. We would like to be known as that sometime, someday. This is the 60th anniversary of the Prospect League. 6-0.
Yeah.
Started in 1963.
Hmm.
In fact, as the Central Illinois Collegiate League. And when they moved into Terre Haute, Indiana, they changed the name. And that was 18 years ago to the Prospect League.
Okay.
So well renowned. We televise every game. There's a couple of leagues that really are head and shoulders above a lot of the other ones, and we consider ourselves one of those. And
Yeah.
Baseball America judges us that way too. So
I wanted to ask you about you rattled off those colors, the perfect game purple that you mentioned, and the no-hitter navy, which is, like we said, it's like a Yankees navy, right? Like it's a
yes,
deep
yes,
navy.
it's a deep navy.
Yeah, so all like we said earlier, almost black. When you held up the cap, it had the deep navy top and then the purple brim, was sort of, almost like Rockies-ish, Colorado Rockies-ish colors. There are not that many minor league teams or, minor league lowercase, not just affiliated, but throughout, all levels of minor league baseball. There are not that many that are using the color purple. Was that an intentional decision? Was that a thought that, hey, there's not that much purple out there, we're going to sort of seize the purple market?
Absolutely. I'm a Navy guy. I love not military, but the color Navy.
Yeah.
And so I've always wanted to have a team, and we've operated 9 teams over the last 45 years that use Navy, purple, copper. I'm big on copper, metallic copper,
Okay.
and silver. So we used a combination that we don't think has ever been used before by any sport. And that was significant. We've tried to done some things that maybe were different and unique.
Awesome. Well, it really is a fun brand. The Billy Goat here, like I said, I'm going to talk to Ryan about the Billy Goat here, but he's got this sort of sly look on his face, the Johnny Cash smile. I will tell you that Ring of Fire is my go-to karaoke songs. I'll be thinking of your Billy Goat here when I do karaoke from now on with that Johnny Cash smirk there. But he's a really fun character, and I know Ryan Foose does such great work. When I saw the Blue Suede Shoes logos, I was kind of hoping that we might see the players themselves wearing blue shoes out on the playing field there. Any chance we'll see that?
Well, you got to remember that we're having up to 4 players from any one college on one summer collegiate team. So they're going to be coming in from 17 different colleges.
Okay.
We do not furnish shoes. We do not have a shoe deal, so to speak.
Okay.
But we have signed a contract with New Balance for uniforms.
Okay.
But the mascot, JR, which we will unveil in mid-May, does have on blue suede shoes.
Okay. I like that. I wonder if you could have like a mystery night, and you could have the mascot gets shot, and you could have a Who Shot JR night.
Some people wouldn't remember that. When Larry Hagman,
right.
when Linda Gray shot Larry Hagman on the Who Shot JR.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would not know. Good catch. I like that. We also unveiled our new junior mascot, and he is Billy the Kid.
Oh.
I mean, everybody knows what a baby goat is called.
As a kid.
That's right. So our junior mascot, JR Jr., is Billy the Kid. Every Sunday night and Tuesday night, we'll have baby goats here for kids to pick up, pet, have their picture taken with, etc. There's just something, and I don't know how you spell the word "aw." And every time I show this to a young mother that has kids, that's what comes out is "aw."
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I want to go hang out with some baby goats. I mean, baby goats are kind of the best, right? Like, so I definitely want to see that. Would love the idea of the extra innings stage that you have there for live music after the games. It sounds like a really fun baseball experience. It's a really fun brand. Ryan did a great job. I'm going to go talk to him about that now. I really appreciate you hopping on and talking about this brand, and congratulations on the anticipated success of this new team, because I know that it's going to be a hit, and as it were.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, we're proud of it. We've done a lot of work in the community. Ryan was instrumental in the release, and he was neat. We probably drove him crazy for a while, which I think he would say. But no, we've had a good time with it.
Fantastic. Where can people find you online?
Rockabillysbaseball.com. Rockabillys with a Y.
Rockabillys with a Y.
Rockabillysbaseball.com.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks,
Good
Dennis.
night.
Take care. All right, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so pleased to welcome back to the podcast Ryan Foose of Fooser Sports Design. Ryan, thanks so much for being here. How you doing?
Good. Pleasure to be back.
Yeah, man, it's good to talk to you. And we last time you were on, we had a whole conversation about your work on the Copa de la Diversión, and I really enjoyed talking to you then. We're going to talk this time about one brand, the Jackson Rockabillys, and your work on that, because this is a unique, fun brand, and it's been really well received out there. So we'll just jump right in if you're okay. What were the challenges that they presented to you? What was your task as the designer on this project?
Yeah, so luckily working with Springfield Lucky Horseshoes within the Prospect League got me into this job, and it's definitely unique, and I think it's always really, really tough for any team to pick a name. I mean, it's the toughest thing, and so I think originally it was Blue Suedes was the kind of the name, which is definitely unique but tough.
Yeah.
And so then it kind of evolved slowly and getting feedback from the public, and Rockabillys in itself is a very minor league name. Like, I know that it's an actual kind of reference to music, but it worked out nicely in all the components that came with it. And I'm sure Dennis has brought up all the thoughts that came into what to do with a goat and a kid and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the challenges was, and I don't know if I've ever experienced it working with a team, is before the name was figured out, before direction or style or anything like that, the colors were decided on. So they were gung-ho on navy and purple and copper and white, and there was even some names that were thrown around that the colors would not have worked for. And so it's a rarity to have somebody come in and go, look, these are what we're working with. Have had some teams that said, hey, we want a green involved or gold, or we don't want to use black as a dark color. But I think the trickiest part of this was to say, hey, you're going to have to make purple and navy work, which it could go a slippery slope in a lot of different ways. But overall, it was a fun project to work on and tried to hide as many details as possible within the brand.
Well, the fun part of the logo definitely really shines through. And you mentioned the Springfield Lucky Horseshoes, right? Like this is something you're seeing a lot in minor league baseball, where there are layers and different, you know, elements where you can be sort of modular about a minor league brand. This one including, you know, the Billy Goat himself, the guitar, the pickup truck, the blue suede shoes, the record. What am I missing? There are a lot of elements to this narrative, right? Like in Springfield did that more than I think any team I've ever seen, actually, right? Like they have so many different stories that they're telling in their suite of logos that you created, and we haven't talked about that one. So there's a future episode for you. But the stories that are told in this logo with the blue suede shoes and the Billy Goat character and the truck and the record, that's a challenge to fit that into one suite of logos, is it not?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, there is an issue with a certain team in Hartford that when you include a goat as a logo, and that arguably the Yard Goats being a top 10, 15 minor league brand, the last thing you want to do is present a goat brand and then immediately get feedback from the public of, oh, this is Hartford in a different colorway. So that's where we try to do something unique. And so the kind of the smirk is Johnny Cash. The hair twirl and the 50s Les Paul guitar is in reference to Carl Perkins, kind of the godfather of rockabilly's. The truck reference was pulled in, I think from 1956 or 58, because that's the year that Blue Suede Shoes was released. And so obviously then the Blue Suede Shoes themselves make an appearance as a tertiary logo. So the idea was stylistically, obviously make it unique, but then pull actual historical significance to the guitar, the smirk, the hairstyle, and all that, so that when you see it and you start kind of pulling things together, it says something more than just having a guitar holding goat.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And the name Rockabillys, I mean, before we started recording here, we were chatting and I kept saying Billy Goats, right? Like, and it's not the Billy Goats. It's, you know, there's a ton going on here outside of just the actual elements, the design style, you know, and Dennis and I talked about the blue suede shoes and we talked about the Billy Goat character and the guitar. I wanted to get into this with you a little bit, the type that you created, this, you know, very musical type, and it you know, it's evocative of a place and of a style of music. What was your process going into creating a type that is part baseball but part, you know, of this culture? It's not, you know, it's not necessarily a baseball script in any respect, right? Like it's more of a musical sense of place typography that you created.
Yeah, and that was an interesting one because I think there's a little bit of a back and forth with the team and myself, because the original concept was to kind of do these old show posters, like this really bold sans serif kind of feel. I think it's really easy for a lot of teams to do script for baseball. It just seems to work out. I feel like 90% of baseball teams have a script. So to kind of add script like elements to it, it's based on kind of older album cover typography is what we kind of pulled that from, and having the S swoop down with Jackson in it was kind of a nod to the old baseball kind of pastime. But I think there is, I don't know how much they use it, there is a script Jackson with the J creating a kind of a musical note and all that, so we included it all. But It was frankly, everything about this was just trying to be unique, and create this just level of character to the brand, instead of saying, here's a straightforward, blocky form with a script and all that. So
Mhm.
it was definitely a little bit of playing in how much detail do you include. And I want I want to say Dennis and the crew, their road cap for this year is actually the full kind of word mark, which I don't know if I've seen a baseball team do that in a long time outside of a fashion hat, but their on field actually is this kind of word mark. So it's definitely getting its use from them down in Jackson.
Huh. That's really interesting. You said there were a lot of hidden elements. And I don't know if it's fair of me just to say, hey, what can you point out? Or do I need to like guess at them? Do I need to, just stare at this and see what the elements are? What are you mentioned the smirk and the curly hair, right? Like, so those are, I
Mhm.
appreciate those details. What are the things in this logo that the casual observer is not going to notice until it's pointed out, or unless they really study it?
Yeah, a lot of that was just the reference of lookalikes and
Yeah.
making sure guitars and trucks and all that fit the same year. There was a little bit of on hit, I guess, the goat's right shoulder. We needed to fill a little negative space, and there's a little lightning bolt, little white lightning. So if you are familiar with the moonshining business, little white lightning is snuck in there. And one of the concepts that didn't quite make it, and maybe we'll see it in a future year, from the Rockabillys, is to do Sunday whites. And so we had this whole concept of, here's this rockabilly guy that's doing his thing as a musician and all that comes with it, on a Saturday night, and then Sunday combs his hair a little bit tighter and dresses up a little bit cleaner and goes to church on Sunday morning. So we had a Sunday brand kind of set up, but we'll see how this as the Jackson Rockabillys goes for now. But there's more things to come.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how this kind of grows. But the biggest thing was to make something that was culturally specific, historically specific, because it's something that the people of Jackson and that part of Tennessee really do care about their music and understand that they were the start of something. So didn't want to do anything too, you know, want to have fun with it, but I think there's a level of making fun rather than kind of partaking in the aspects that people really enjoy. So yeah, it was straightforward for the most part, with adding this kind of very cartoonish baseball feel.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned Jackson in particular. This is a place that had a double A team sort of ripped away from it in the process of the
Mhm.
reorganization of minor league baseball. As a designer, how much do you consider the history of the sport in the area? Or do you just come at this from without considering that, without, letting that factor into decisions that you would make in the design process?
I think that was one of the keys, and that came, I think, with the color reference at the beginning of our talk, is there wasn't going to be used any black or green. And I don't think we need to go into the details of how the generals left and why they left and all that kind of stuff. But I think there was a little bit of a bitter taste in people's mouths around there. So it was really about, how do you create a brand that, because they had to name the team, and there was obviously people that thought, let's do generals or warriors or soldiers or some kind of connection to that. And I think that was, considered, but immediately kind of tossed aside because they wanted to start something new. And I think there's a trust level that needed to be gained in Jackson that says, these people want to come in and create fun nights and great atmospheres. And this team is specifically for you. This isn't, a recycled brand. It is quite unique. And so, yeah, I think it was just a matter of being cognizant of what people would say locally, that they would support it, that they see it and they go, this is something that we can totally get behind.
The purple, you don't see a lot of minor league baseball teams. You don't see a lot of sports teams in general. There are a handful of them, right? And we could name them, we could rattle them off. But just thinking about affiliated minor league baseball, there's maybe what, three teams that use purple, and
Hmm.
when purple teams rebrand, they often go away from purple to other colors.
Hmm.
Well, I guess the Jackalopes, the Grand Junction
Yep.
Jackalopes, are a team. They're not affiliated anymore, but they're in the Pioneer League. The New Orleans Baby Cakes used to have it. the Grand Junction Rockies, I guess, had it. So anyway, like I said, you can name some teams. Is it a challenge to design with purple? Is that why you don't see it as often, or is it another reason that purple just is not used as often as you see some other colors?
I actually just had a conversation with some other designers about the color purple, unrelated to this project, but I think it's a color that it really is a clean color. I think having a nice, dark, clean purple is a really, really crisp look, but it's got some friction, I think, associated to it, where it's not quite masculine, it's not quite feminine. It's kind of, I think it also probably hurts that when people think purple, they think of Barney and these very like stereotypical purple things. It's not a natural color that, I mean, other than like an eggplant and grapes, it's slim to none in terms of what it actually is out there for purple. And so I think when the color palette was decided on, I think it was definitely a head scratcher for me that you want to make sure that you fit the right brand with the right colors.
Yeah.
And so it ended up working out that it ended up being in the shirt and little details here and there within the guitar. So it definitely works out and it's a nice pop with the navy. But there's definitely some moments where you have to be very strategic with it. And I would say the same thing with orange, which rust kind of color was used in this as well with the copper, and trying to make it work cleanly without it kind of being too bright and loud and all that when people look at it.
Yeah. Well, and designers, I wish I had been part of that conversation because it sounds nerdy and awesome, right? Like using the use of purple. One of the facts that I remember from design school, and hopefully I'm restating this correctly, that when Isaac Newton was designing the color wheel in 1666, that purple was originally not one of the colors, right? That purple was divided into indigo and violet, and indigo is more blue and violet is more red. And it ultimately, those two got sort of lumped together into this one color of purple for simplicity, right? So we could have the primary colors and the secondary colors. But when you think about purple, right, like it almost by its nature is sort of a divided color, right? It's either violet or it's indigo, right? So it's a warm or it's a cool. So it's an interesting color from that perspective. In my perspective, oh, here you go. This is listeners of the podcast are well familiar with Yodel the cat, who makes frequent appearances here when she's angry about something, which is always because she's a cat. I think Yodel is making it clear. Yodel the cat is making it clear that it's time to wrap up here. It's time for wet food, I think, for both Yodel and me. So, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this brand and the work that you do and your process. It's so great to get that insight into the designer's process on these fun brands. Definitely we'll have you back on again to talk about some more of the work that you've done. It's totally fun to dive deep like this. In the meantime, where can people find you online?
At Fooser Sports everywhere, website, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. But appreciate, as always, having me on.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next time. And brand synergy, by the way, that's a great job. I did a terrible job with the brand synergy. I have a different username on like every platform. So good job by you on that. Ryan, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Have a good week.
You too. Thanks, Ryan. All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so thrilled to be welcoming to the basement in Fort Collins, Colorado, Baseball by Design's wildlife consultant, Ranger Amy Burnett, live in studio once again. Ranger Amy Burnett, hello, welcome. Oh, no.
Getting into this.
And that's great. Now it's on to Studio Simon Stumpers. Goodbye, everybody.
Come on, we're talking about billy goats.
Okay, we're talking about billy goats. You made this crazy sound just now, which brings me to my first question. And I know that you do a lot of preparation for these interviews, and I appreciate that because there's a lot of work that goes into the Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent Ranger Amy Burnett segments. My first question for you: this team is called the Rockabillys. You're a musician. You're a singer. You're going to be singing the national anthem at an Owls with a Z game coming up. Why is a billy goat a good musician? Sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Does. I wish I had a better answer. You probably should come up with this one. They are good musicians because they actually have like different tonal qualities and they have accents. So each billy goat has a different way of talking or bleating, as it's called.
Huh.
And mom billy goats can recognize their kids, and the kids can recognize their mom's voices. And kid is not a colloquial term; it's actually the right term for a baby billy goat, of course.
Mhm.
So they have different vocal qualities, and they recognize each other, and that's what makes them such good communicators.
All right, so let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. Well, we're going to get into billy goats and baseball. Why would the billy goat be a good baseball player?
Billy goats would make a great baseball player because they have certain adaptations that baseball players wish they had in some certain cases. So they can see 320 degrees around them because of their special rectangular pupils. Have you ever looked at their eyes? They're so crazy freaky. You ever looked at a billy
I have
goat's
not
eyes?
spent much time looking into a billy goat's eyes. No.
They have rectangular pupils, just like an octopus.
Wow.
So they have that in common.
Of course.
And those rectangular pupils allow them to look around 320 degrees. So they have all this peripheral vision.
The octopus billy goat branch of the evolutionary tree is really a fascinating one. That's you can see that divergent evolution at play right there.
Exactly.
All right, so they've got good, interesting eyesight.
So these eyes that give them peripheral vision also give them great depth perception. So if you're a baseball player, you want good depth perception. You want to be able to see around you. You can imagine if the pitcher could see behind him, then you could see. It'd be a lot easier to see if someone was stealing bases, right? And they also have these great hooves. The hooves are split in two. They have outer layer, inner layer. Outer layer digs in to the grass or the ground in this case, in the field. So these two different kinds of feet make it really great for gripping, just like a baseball player has the cleats. So they're sort of born with cleats. Now, some other things that may not make them a great baseball player, but makes them like a baseball player, is that billy goats chew their cud. So just like a baseball player is always chewing gum. Do you know why baseball players chew gum all the time?
This sounds like a joke. Are you genuinely asking me the question?
Genuinely I wondered. I had to Google it.
I think it's because they used to chew tobacco and they're not allowed to chew tobacco anymore, so they chew gum instead.
Well, this is true, but why did they chew tobacco? Like,
Oh.
what is the point of chewing something while you're playing baseball?
I don't know.
See, this is why you have me on the show.
No, it isn't.
I'm just kidding.
Is there an answer to the question?
There
If
is.
you had an answer to the question, then that would be why we had you on the show.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so chewing something like chewing tobacco or chewing gum is good for dry mouth, right? And all the dusty fields and the gross stuff that they get in their mouths, they produce saliva. So that was why they started. But there's another reason that they might not have thought of it first, but it helped them play. So baseball players are always superstitious, right? So they do something once and it helps. So they do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So they chew gum because they found that it helps. Well, what it does, it actually stimulates the brain cortex. And so it helps concentration. It helps focus. So all these things that during a long baseball game, I know you don't want, that's a sensitive topic with you.
Yeah, we don't have long baseball games anymore. They're mandatorily cut off at 2:45 because baseball players have to go to bed at 10:30.
So all this, they have to stay on their game literally for a long time, and they have to focus. And, sometimes there are long parts of the game there isn't a lot for someone in the outfield to be doing. So they're chewing gum, kind of keep their brain going so that they can be right on target when they need to catch a fly ball.
I like this. All right. So the relationship between billy goats chewing and baseball players chewing. All right.
So go figure. Oh, one thing I found out was that Alex Rodriguez, apparently he is superstitious, admitted that he used to chew 36 pieces of gum per game.
I have an association with John Kruk too, just having like a huge wad of something. And I can't remember like whether John Kruk, whether with him it was, tobacco or gum, but he used to have a huge wad in his cheek. And I think that's probably not the only thing John Kruk has in common with a billy goat, right? Like they're both pretty gruff.
Yeah.
The relationship of billies
Mhm.
with baseball is fairly extensive. Just recently, we've had Billy Hamilton, Billy Wagner, Billy Butler, and of course, the movie Moneyball is obviously based on Billy Beane, the prospect turned front office person. And then, of course, you've got old face Billy Ripken.
Oh my goodness. Wow. You just said that.
I did. Yeah.
You don't have a G rating on your podcast.
We'll
anymore.
bleep it out. It'll be all right. But that's baseball fans know about old face Billy Ripken.
Whoa.
I met him once in Omaha.
Why do they call him that?
He very famously, there was a baseball card where Billy Ripken was holding a baseball bat, and on the end of the baseball bat, he had written face.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I bet there was a piece of chewing gum in that little baseball card.
There probably was. Yeah. One of those like old styrofoam chewing gum pieces. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway,
All right.
the question is, where does the relationship of Billy to baseball is extensive, but what about the name Billy Goats? Where does that come from?
Well, it's simple, really. It's actually just Billy comes from William. So Billy Goat is a male goat, and that's pretty much it. So you can call it a Billy Goat or just a buck. A female goat's a doe. A boy is a buck, or also called a Billy. So Billy Goat just refers to male goats. And considering that all baseball players at this point in time at the podcast, at this time of recording of the podcast, all baseball players are male. So it makes sense that they would call them Billy Goats.
All major league players are male.
There are female minor
There are
leaguers.
female. There are women playing baseball at lots of different levels, and we have women coaching baseball at more and more levels every day.
Well, I can't wait till we see a female player in the major leagues. That I'm waiting for that day. I think it'll happen.
All right, so we've talked about their cool eyes. It's not the thing I thought you were going to bring up when we first when I asked you, what were the qualities of a Billy Goat that makes him a good baseball player? What are some other things about the Billy Goat that's going to really make him excel out there on the field?
Well, one of the things that Billy Goats love to do is headbutt. So I'm not really sure if that applies to baseball, but at least maybe it could make them look a little bit more intimidating. Like they can do some damage. They can give like other goats little mini goat concussions. They just headbutt them.
Well, this, back in the day when Pete Rose was crashing into catchers in the All-Star game, and ending their careers, that, the collisions at home plate, I think were a Billy Goat would have been really, really good at that. They've sort of legislated collisions out of the game, except for collisions with outfield walls. So maybe...
Ooh. Yeah, maybe it would help them to have that sort of like they're used to having their head, getting head butted and they just recover.
Yeah,
kind of fall over and then shake it off.
Now, what about like, I guess mountain goats are the ones that can just find like the slightest ledge and just hang out there all day in like in a precipice there. So like, is there a Billy Goat do Billy Goats have that? Can they stand on like narrow ledges, or is that mountain goats?
Oh, yeah. So all Billy Goats descended from. And not too long ago, really, I mean, relatively evolutionarily
from octopuses,
from those from mountain goats.
Oh,
so our domestic goats are still pretty much wild goats, as far as their adaptations. So their feet have the inside layer of their feet are spongy, kind of like imagine like toe shoes in ballet.
Okay.
So they're soft on the inside and hard on the outside. So that soft on the inside is very grippy. So that soft part allows them to grip on the very, very, very smallest little piece of rock, and they can hold on there. So they don't need much. So their footing is very, very sure. They're very sure-footed. So Billy Goats would be great at keeping their footing on any kind of terrain on a baseball field.
But if they're pitching and they've got this spongy, sticky interior to their hooves, and they're walking off the field and the umpire checks them, they're going to get thrown out of the game.
That's true. They might have to be inspected every inning or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So kind of like if Max Scherzer was a Billy Goat, that would explain how come he got thrown out of a baseball game for substances.
Look at you throwing around names. I have no idea who that is, but I do know that Billy Goats have beards, but both males and females have beards. So
like in the circus.
There you go. Like in the circus. My favorite baseball players with beards would be like Charlie Blackmon. Maybe we should call him Billy Blackmon. He's got a Billy Goat beard.
Okay.
Brandon Marsh could be Billy Marsh.
Billy Marsh would be a great name for a baseball player. Billy Marsh, Billy Blackmon.
Yeah, just kind of rename him.
At the time of this recording, I am going to a Rockies game today, and I think maybe I'll try out Billy Blackmon when he comes up to bat.
Everyone's going to be so confused around you.
I don't think so. They'll just think I'm an idiot.
Well, they don't know you, so it's
okay. Before I let you get out of here and go upstairs from the basement, what else do we need to know? What are some final thoughts on Billy Goats as baseball players as we get out of here?
I think they're natural team players. They live in herds. They don't do well by themselves. And that's because they're considered prey animals. And that's just a fancy word for they're tasty. Everything wants to eat them.
Like T-Rexes.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't noticed, goat tastes pretty good. So when if you're a goat, you want to make sure that you work in numbers because that's the best defense. So in a way, baseball players, Billy Goats, they have a lot in common.
I thought laughter was the best defense. That's the best medicine.
That's for you. That's for Paul Caputo.
Ranger Amy Burnett, Baseball by Design's wildlife consultant. Thank you once again for coming back. We need to number these segments. We need to count how many times you've appeared on the podcast now. It's been quite a few. We're probably in double digits by now. Thank you for coming on Baseball by Design.
It was my pleasure. That wasn't too bad, was it?
All right, everyone, welcome back. Once again, here with Studio Simon Stumper. One of my favorite times of the week is getting to talk with Dan Simon about a minor league baseball logo, to learn some trivia about a corner of America. And here we are talking about the Jackson Rockabillys. We're talking about a specific style of music. We're talking about Billy Goats. I don't know. There's a pickup truck in this logo. So again, I'm entering this fully unprepared because, Dan, you always come at this with an approach that I can never guess. So I'm flying blind, as it were.
For the questions that I sometimes ask where there's two right answers and one wrong answer, well, obviously that's everyone, but where two are real and one is made up, what did you refer to that as?
I called it Two Truths and a Lie.
Maybe we need to rename this segment instead of Studio Simon Stumper's Two Truths and a Lie. I kind of like that. TV game show in the making somewhere there.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, you happen to be an expert at rebranding, so I think if anyone can pull off this name change for this segment, it's you.
Or this could be the Studio Simon Stumper's alternate identity.
Oh, I like it. So, right.
Right,
Yeah. So
don't-
every so often, 5 times a year, we're going to play this game as Two Truths and a Lie.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe we should do that. So we're going to do that right here. Okay.
Okay.
So the team which preceded the Rockabillys,
Rockabillys.
the Rockabillys was the Jackson Generals, a team I did not name, but for which I did develop the brand identity.
Okay.
And with that project, I ended up presenting 6 different options in the first round, which included 2 featuring generals on which the team requested I base directions.
Okay.
So the team came to me and said, here's some of the things we have talked about internally, and we'd appreciate if you can work up directions based on these concepts, 2 of which were general themed. Okay, so today's Two Truths and a Lie asks,
a trivia show within a trivia show, Two Truths and a Lie.
which of these 3 famous generals was not one of the generals the team wished to see represented in logo form? Was it A, General George S. Patton, B, General Andrew Jackson, or C, General Robert E. Lee? I want the people listening in the audio medium that is this podcast, what I am seeing on screen is Paul in deep thought.
Yeah. I thought I was going to know this one right off the bat because I thought you had actually told me this before, and I was expecting different names.
I might have very well told you this,
Okay.
but
So
we discuss a lot of things, and it's
All right.
somewhere got lost in the ether.
sometimes I'll delay by asking you to repeat the 3 choices. So I'm supposed to
see.
choose the one that is not out of
It's
these
not-
3.
Right, was not requested by the client to be seen in logo form in the first round presentation. General George S. Patton, General Andrew Jackson, or General Robert E. Lee?
All right. It's going to be Jackson or Lee. The correct answer will be Jackson or Lee.
The correct answer in that it's a lie.
The correct answer the correct answer in that it was not one of the ones that the team came to you with. So we're talking about Jackson, Tennessee. So certainly the role they played in the Civil War might be a factor. So normally I like to talk these through. The fact of the Jackson Generals playing in Jackson, Tennessee makes me feel like perhaps Jackson would have been one of them. I think Patton was one of them. I just have it in my head that Patton was one of them. So I'm going to say Robert E. Lee, final answer.
Give the man a cigar. Yes, Robert E. Lee. Now, something that should be noted, the first thing, when I was putting this question together and I decided to put Robert E. Lee, especially here in the year 2023, you likely will, or almost certainly would not see a new brand identity based on a Confederate icon.
Yeah.
And so I realized when I was putting this together, that thought might have been in one's mind trying to answer this, thinking, nah, they wouldn't have gone with Robert E. Lee. But this was 12 years ago, maybe. I'd have to look back in my files and see what year I did that identity. And even as recently as that, those types of things were not yet verboten. So verboten, correct my pronunciation if
I'm not fluent in Spanish, so I can't really say.
is that Spanish?
I don't believe it's Spanish. No,
I'm imagining it's German. but
it is
that's-
German.
Okay, so you got it right, despite the fact that it might have seemed like the right answer. So, or a completely viable answer, I should say.
Right.
So, one of the things I'm going to do for you, Paul, is I am going to send you the general Andrew Jackson direction I did, because it's still one of the favorite things I did that ended up on the cutting room floor. Normally, when I'm doing an identity, I'm not asked to represent an actual person who really existed.
Yeah.
There might be some things like with the Kannapolis Cannonballers identity where they wanted the character to kind of capture the spirit of Dale Earnhardt and maybe some other things about him in that, but it's not Dale Earnhardt. In this case, it needed to be Andrew Jackson. Another example of this, and here I go kind of contradicting myself. I also did George Washington for the Fredericksburg Nationals and his mother, Mary. So, and it's important to depict them accurately. So people know who this is, and but still make it into a compelling logo. And I really loved the way that logo came out. I understand why they didn't go with that, even though it was one of the directions they requested to see. But I'll send that to you, and you can post that on social media for the delight of your millions of listeners. And here's a little Studio Simon tidbit with regard to this.
Yet another segment.
Well, we should, another Studio Simon tidbit moment.
We need a little musical sting with that.
The epaulette from the jacket in that Andrew Jackson direction I later modified a bit and used for the epaulettes for those of you who might not know what an epaulette is, those are those things on the shoulders of jackets worn by generals and maybe other ranks in different armed forces.
From the French word for shoulder, which is épaule.
Oh, okay. And they have those like little tassels hanging off of them. So the one that I had on Andrew Jackson's jacket in that logo direction, I modified a little bit and used in the primary logo for the Milwaukee Admirals identity I developed for the hockey team, the American Hockey League team identity I developed for them. So reduce, reuse, recycle.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Borrow from yourself there. Wasn't there also an Admirals logo that had a refrigerator in it?
Yes, that's speaking of alternate identities, that's an alternate identity, because the reason they're named the Admirals goes back to, I believe they were an amateur team at the time. Even if they weren't, that's not an important part of this. The owner of the team owned an appliance store, and the main refrigerator they sold there was Admiral brand refrigerators. So that's where the name Admirals comes from, not a nautical military themed name, but major appliance theme identity.
So we have to inception our way out of all of these segments here. This was a Studio Simon tidbit. within the trivia segment, Two Truths and a Lie, within the Studio Simon Stumpers segment on the Baseball by Design podcast. Dan Simon, thank you so much for joining for all of those layers, those Inception style layers of podcast segments. We'll see you next week for another trivia question, whether it's Two Truths and a Lie or a Studio Simon Stumper classic remains to be seen.
You have that to look forward to. I'll see you next week.
See you next week, Dan.